Hi everyone, I'm Jay. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made this delicious apple cake pie. So I'm peeling about 10 apples. Any kind of apples would do for this recipe. I just had these that needed using up. So now I'll just slice each apple into medium-sized pieces. So now my apples are all sliced. I'm just going to squeeze the juice of one lemon into the apples. After adding the lemon juice, I stick the pot on a medium heat. And as you can see, and you would expect, the apples have started to create its own liquid. So now I'll add my spices. I'm going to add half a teaspoon of nutmeg, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and half a teaspoon of ginger. So I've turned the heat up and I'm going to give that a good stir through. As you can see, the apples have started to cook down now. So it's been about 10 minutes and all I've done is kept the apples moving under a high heat. Hopefully you can see the liquid has reduced down quite a lot and the apples have cooked down quite a bit now as well. So now I have added 2 teaspoons of soft brown sugar. I just add enough to taste really. And I just give that another good stir. Now I'm adding a couple of good handfuls of sultanas. Okay, so I'll give that a good stir. The liquid has all but evaporated now. I don't want the apples to completely mash down, so it's time for this to come off the heat. While the apples are cooling, I'll make my pastry. It's half the fat to flour for short crust, and I'll add a pinch of salt. I'm using 200 grams of plain flour and 100 grams of very cold butter. I'll have some pastry left over, but it can freeze for up to 3 months. So now I'm literally just pinching the butter into the flour. I'm not trying to handle it too much. It will take some time for the butter to work into the flour before I get my crumb texture. Alright, so the butter is all worked into the flour now. I'll add some ice cold water. I'm adding the water a little at a time until the butter and flour clump together to form a dough that I don't want to be too wet or too sticky. As you can see, it's clumping together now with minimal force from me. So that's it, my pastry is done and I'm going to let that rest in the fridge for about an hour or so. So now I'm going to roll my pastry. I like to, as close as possible, have my pastry in the shape of my dish, in this case round. It helps me keep shape better and I find it easier to roll. I sprinkle plain flour on my surface and the pin, and I turn the dough as I roll it so that it won't stick to the table. So now I'm just running my fingers round, making sure there's no air pockets and that the pastry is flush all the way round. And to trim the excess pastry, I just run the rolling pin over the top, and I find it cuts it away really easily. Then I just like to pinch the pastry around to make a neat border. I'm going to be baking the pastry blind, so I'm going to be piercing the surface all over with a fork. I'm not going to go as far down as the dish, I'm just going to be piercing lightly on top. So now I'm just arranging a layer of grease-proof paper around the base and sides of the pastry, and then I'm going to pour in some uncooked rice, put in a thicker layer at the edge to support the sides of the pastry while it cooks. You could also use uncooked beans if you didn't have rice. Now that's done, I'm going to place that into a preheated oven at 200 Celsius for 15 minutes. So while the pastry is baking, I'm just going to make a start on the sponge. In this bowl I have 133 grams of butter and 133 grams of sugar, and I'm just going to cream those together. Now that my butter and sugar is light and fluffy, it's time to start adding my eggs. I'm going to add 2 eggs, one at a time. That's the 2 eggs beaten in, and now I'm going to add some vanilla extract, about a teaspoonful. In this bowl I've got 141 grams of self-raising flour, half a teaspoon of baking powder and a pinch of salt, and I'm just going to mix that together with a fork. So after blending that all together, I'm just going to sift it all straight into the mixture. Then I'll give that all a really good mix. So that's done, I'll put that to the side for now. So my pastry's had its 15 minutes now. I'll let the rice cool down a bit before transferring it to a storage jar that will keep for next time. So as you can see, I've taken out all the rice. Now I'm just going to load the case with my apple mixture. And now I'm just sprinkling a teaspoon of brown sugar on top of the apples. And now I'm going to spread evenly the sponge batter on top. I'm going to bake this for 45 minutes at 180 Celsius. If I find it's getting too brown on top, then I'll cover it with some tin foil. So my apple pie cake took 45 minutes to bake, and I just waited 10 minutes before turning it out of my dish. I just wanted you to see that the bottom is beautifully cooked, nice and crispy. And there it is, our delicious apple cake pie, chunks of spicy soft apple on top of a crispy melt in the mouth short crust pastry, topped with a delicious light vanilla sponge. I hope you've enjoyed today's recipe. For more recipes like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.